Hi everybody, I miss all of you. In case you missed Tiferet, this is Rabbi Meir's wall. You could pretend you're here. This week's Parsha is Parshat Eikev, and it starts off with a very famous pasuk. V'haya Eikev tishme'un. It will be because or if or when you listen to all the mitzvot, then you will receive all these wonderful rewards that Hashem wants to give us. Rashi asks the famous question, why is the word Eikev used to mean when or if or because? A more typical word in the Torah would be im, v'haya im tishmo. So Rashi explains that this is referring to mitzvot that we step on them with our heels. In other words, we don't view them as significant. And what Hashem's telling us is if you're careful to do even those mitzvot that a lot of people step on with their heels, that's how you'll be zocha. That will be the doorway to help you be zocha to all of these wonderful rewards that I want to give you. Rav Yaakov Haber, who has a shul here in Ramat Beit Shemesh, who is not my husband, though that is my husband's name too, asks an interesting question. He says if we look at the rest of the parsha, and we look at the mitzvot that are listed after this introduction, V'haya Eikev Tishmon, they are not small, insignificant mitzvot. They are very big mitzvot, and nobody would think that anyone would view them as the kind of mitzvot we step on with our heels. They are fearing Hashem, loving Hashem, thanking Hashem for giving us food, davening to Hashem, remembering to be nice to Gerim because we ourselves were strangers. These are not small mitzvot. So why, he asks, is Rashi as an introduction saying that if you listen to the mitzvot that people view as insignificant because they step on them with their heels, then you'll be zoche to all the rewards that Hashem wants to give us. So he brings in a beautiful svat emet from Parshat Shemot. When Moshe is about to become the leader, he's standing before the thorn bush, and a malach's voice comes out and says, Moshe, Moshe, stop! Stop, take off your shoes, you're standing on holy ground. The svat emet asks, what's the significance of taking off your shoes now? And he answers that Moshe is on the threshold now of becoming a leader. And Hashem's telling him, I want you to know what the most important thing is before you become a leader. And that is, take off your shoes. What happens when we wear shoes? We are protected. We have a barrier between ourselves and the earth. We have a barrier between sharp objects and ourselves. We don't get hurt because we're not sensitive, we're protected. Hashem says, you want to be a leader? Take off your shoes. You need to have sensitivity in order to be a leader. It's going to be more painful for you. It's going to be harder for you, but that's the only way that you could become a leader. Take off your shoes and feel every little sharp pain of your people, and that's the only way that you'll be able to lead them. So Rabbi Haber ties it into here also. V'haya Eikev tishme'un. It will only be if you do the mitzvah that on the one hand people are negligent about. On the other hand, you actually need to step on them with your heels and not your shoes. What does that mean? Again, if you look at the mitzvot, these are big mitzvot. They're not insignificant. But he points out that these are still mitzvot that people might not be so careful to do because they are harder than other more flamboyant mitzvot like sukkah, shofar, Seder. These are the things that people typically think of as representing Jewish mitzvot, and those are easier to do. They're physical kinds of things. But the ones that require sensitivity, such as being kind to Gerim, such as praying to Hashem, such as thanking Hashem for giving us food, requires sensitivity on our part. You have to look around and notice, oh, Hashem gave us food. We can't just take it for granted. And then we thank Him. Loving Hashem, fearing Hashem. These are not actions. These are emotions. They require sensitivity. So on the one hand, these are the mitzvot which we step on with our heels because they're too hard sometimes for us to do. But on the other hand, we have to, v'haya Eikev tishmon, we have to step on them with our heels and not with our shoes. They require sensitivity. These are the precise mitzvot that will enable us to receive the abundant reward that Hashem really so badly wants to give us. So, for example, sometimes people hear, oh, it's a good idea to get involved with shidduchim. And they say that's a good idea, but then they sort of forget about it. But if we were sensitive and we thought to ourselves, somebody's looking for a shidduch, they're feeling lonely, and we step physically in their feet, not their shoes, their feet, and we say, oh, they're lonely. It's hard to be lonely, and we feel for them, we're more likely to do something about it. Or when people ask us for money for tzedakah, in Ramat Beit Shemesh, as I'm sure all over the world, there are people always asking for tzedakah. So instead of thinking, oh, another tzedakah collector, we think to ourselves, these people don't have food in their houses. There are kids in Ramat Beit Shemesh who literally can't fall asleep at night because their stomachs are grumbling, because they are so hungry. So when someone comes to our door and we think their children are really hungry, we step in their feet. Or when somebody's new in our class, or new in our school, or new in our block, and we don't just give them a token cake, which is nice in itself, but we think they're new. They're worried. Maybe they're worried. They need friends. They need advice. We try to really feel. These are the things that we need to use our heels for that will enable us to get this reward from Hashem. Now, this reward is referring to reward in Olam Haba. But sometimes we get to have a taste of what that reward feels like. I saw a beautiful story in one of Rabbi Krohn's book. It happened at the time that Leiby was killed. Everyone remembers the horrible story a couple of years ago when a little boy in Borough Park was kidnapped and was killed. So it seems that in the same neighborhood, a few blocks away, there was another little boy who we'll call Zalman, and he heard what was going on. Now, in the past couple of weeks or months, his parents had been having a very hard time with him because he refused to wear his tzitzis. And now, when he saw that everybody was looking for Leiby before they found him, he went to his parents and he said, you know what, I want to help, and I'm going to wear my tzitzis in the zechut of that, hopefully we'll be able to find Leiby. And when Leiby's body was unfortunately found, the parents were wondering, is Zalman going to continue wearing his tzitzis? But they didn't want to pressure him, so they didn't say anything. And he came to them, and he said to them, you know what? I'm going to continue wearing the tzitzis, even though we didn't find Leiby. We didn't find him alive. And his parents were very happy, and his mother wanted to share that with Leiby's parents who were sitting Shiva. And when she went, she had to wait so long outside the house because there was a line all the way around the corner. And when she finally got there, she figured they wouldn't even remember her because there were so many strangers visiting. And she told them the story. She told them how Leiby's death, unfortunately, inspired her son to wear his tzitzis, and he had been giving them a very hard time with it. And a few days later, Leiby's father called her up, and he said to her, I remember the story that you told me at the Shiva, and I'd like to meet your son Zalman and thank him. So the mother brought Zalman over, and Leiby's father took his hand and said to him, Zalman, I just want to thank you so much that in the zechut for Leiby's neshama you're wearing the tzitzis, and I want to give you something. And he went to the room and he brought back a pair of tzitzis, and he said, these are Leiby's tzitzis. And I'm sure he would be so honored to have such a tzaddik like you wearing these tzitzis. And the little boy Zalman continued to wear them, and every single morning when he put them on, he said, L'zecher nishmat Leiby. Now, Rabbi Krohn was telling this story because he just marveled how somebody can take a tragedy and turn it into an uplifting experience for somebody else. And that's true and that's beautiful. But I would just like to also point out how this boy Zalman, he had been, so to speak, of course he's a little boy, but we could still learn from here a message. He had been, so to speak, stepping on this mitzvah. He had been negligent. He wasn't doing it. He had whatever reasons he had, he wasn't doing it. And now, not only was he doing it, but he was doing it in a way that every single morning he felt such a warmth and such a positive connection to Hashem. Every time he put on the tzitzis, it wasn't even like it the way it was beforehand. He actually felt a little bit of the reward, the natural reward, almost like the consequence, the flow that comes when somebody does a mitzvah whose purpose, of course, is to connect us to Hashem. And he felt that every single morning when he said, L'zecher nishmat leibi. So here's an example of somebody who started to do a mitzvah that he stepped on with his heel. And, of course, again, it ties in because it required sensitivity on his part. And he got to feel a little bit of the reward after changing his mind towards the mitzvah.